You have to think about things from multiple different perspectives. And with my identity and my background and my worldview, I've experienced a bunch of situations where I've had to just change my perspective or look at something from multiple angles. My name's Zair Ortiz. My pronouns are he, him, and they, them, and I am a technical writer.
And how would you explain your profession to somebody who had never heard of it before?
So I think it's important to recognize that there are many different types of technical writers. The type of technical writing that I do is specific to the software industry. And what I do is I write documentation that completes software products. I identify as a transgender man. I also identify as Latinx, and I'm a proud Puerto Rican man. I grew up in Chicago, in the heart of Logan Square. It was a really, as I can remember it, pretty fun, very adventurous. I knew everyone in my neighborhood. So my neighbors were really welcoming people. They always had their doors open, so I remember playing with all the kids on the block. We would regularly get together after school, play soccer, football, everything. My grandfather also had a corner store in the area, so it was cool to go over there after school and get anything I wanted. It was like a little child's paradise. I could go into a store, grab any candy or food that I wanted and eat it. And I'm a foodie, so.
And did you have any role models growing up?
Yes, I had many. Only 4 come to mind, so I'll talk about those 4. 3 of them were actually my teachers, and 1 of them was my neighbor. So growing up, I had a neighbor who was a nurse, and he was also a gay man. And I looked up to him, even though I was very young and we didn't interact all the time. But I always knew that he was a friendly neighbor that I could count on, someone who I could talk to about anything. And here and there, he would come over to my parents' house and we would share food and hang out. And it was really cool to have my first LGBTQ+ role model in my life. His presence alone spoke volumes to me at that time in my life. The other 3 role models that I had in my life when I was younger were my teachers. I went to school in Wicker Park, and at that time in CPS, that school in particular was super underfunded. The government simply did not care about the students who went to that school. So a lot of my teachers invested the money from their salaries into our education. And that was an impactful thing for me because it showed that out of so many adults in our lives who had already given up on children attending this school, they still cared about us and they were still investing in us. Those 3 teachers were my STEAM teachers. So I had a math teacher. We are still friends on Facebook till this day. She's really cool. And she went above and beyond and always gave me additional math problems when she saw that I liked the math problems. It was not a punishment or anything like that, but she saw that I was really engaged and really interested in this. I had another teacher, my science teacher, Mr. Gonzalez. He also invested his own money and time, but he would take us to the Chicago River, have us go in the river, pull out samples of phosphates, nitrates, everything that was inside of the river that we were testing it for. And then we actually tested the water and the health of the creatures that lived in the water. And that was pretty cool because we actually wrote to local government saying that they need to do something about the Chicago River. And now I have a signed letter from Obama promising that he would do something about it. I don't know if he did, but I have the evidence. My last and most influential role model was Miss Freeman. She was the most impactful role model for me by far. She also invested her own money into the students that she taught. She had cancer, so she had colon cancer and she was dying while she was my teacher. But of course, she didn't let us know that. She hid that from us. And the only reason I found out later on was because I was looking for my teacher who one day was no longer coming to school. So the faculty eventually had to tell me that. But her role in my life was that she taught me how to play chess and she taught me how to write. 2 things that I do heavily until today. So playing chess for me just opened up my world. It helped me make friends. It helped me build community. It helped me show off a little bit and build some self-confidence in ways that I didn't have confidence before. And it was just a way for me to continue engaging with other students, because in order to play chess, you need two people. And then on the other side of that, becoming a writer with this teacher was the first time in my life that I had an outlet to express everything that was going on internally with me at that time. That was something that I didn't have before. And as soon as she opened my world to journaling and writing, I just felt like an overall much happier student. I knew that I was a part of the LGBTQ+ community at a very young age. As early as I could have my first few thoughts, I already knew that I was part of the community. And it was very difficult for me at that time because I couldn't share that with anyone. Unfortunately, my environment did not allow me to share who I was in any type of positive way. So I remember feeling very introverted because of that, also very secluded because of that, and just overall like a lonely child. I had a very Catholic upbringing. Both my parents are Catholic, and I also attended Catholic school for a few years before attending Chicago Public School, where I met those role models that I previously spoke about. It's actually kind of funny because when I went to the CPS, I was passing all my classes with flying colors, and when I went to the Catholic school, I was failing and always in trouble. So that's also an interesting part of my experience.
Did you have any access to queer spaces as a young person?
No, I did not have any access to queer spaces. The only exception was maybe my neighbor. Age 17, I had my first girlfriend, and that was a cool experience in high school because before that, I thought that I would never be in a relationship because it always felt so far-fetched and impossible. At that time, I remember coming out to my family as a lesbian. So I had to go through many coming outs, and that experience taught me a lot about how I wanted to navigate coming out as a transgender man in the future versus that experience that I had at age 17, because that was not the most positive experience. When I first came out, I told my friends at school. Everyone was just like, we already know, great, we support you. And then I shared that with my siblings who followed the same pattern. They were just like, yeah, we support you. Where it was not so great was when I shared with my parents and shared with my extended family. So when I shared with my abuela, she was actually really welcoming, but while I shared that with her, I also shared it with one of my aunts who in that moment abandoned me and cut me out of her life. She was someone who was really close to me, and she was someone who always called me gifted, brilliant, really just uplifting me in all of these ways, and someone who also supported me a lot in my interest in STEAM fields. So losing her at age 17 was difficult for me because she was an adult in my life who I trusted. But moving away from her, everybody else was accepting, but it wasn't the same level of like celebration that I was looking for, and that was tricky to navigate at that age because I just felt lucky enough to be loved by my family. And I was just like, well, they said it's okay, but there's all these caveats to that, right? So I think sometimes it's a little bit difficult navigating your expectations at that age because everything that I had previously thought about, I was just like, well, what if they, I don't know, all these questions like, what if they abandon me? What if they don't want to be a part of my life anymore? What if they don't want to participate in my life? Like, what do I do there? And I actually had plans for that if my parents were not going to accept me because I had no idea where they stood. And they also had said, you know, they're my parents, they saw me every day, so they had previously mentioned some kind of like passive comments here and there that were pretty homophobic. So that gave me the impression that I need a plan B in case this doesn't work out. Luckily, my parents didn't kick me out, but those caveats hurt a lot, and it had to do with a lot of interrogating, a lot of questioning, a lot of double standards, a lot of very like homophobic questioning for a few years after coming out. And to me, that signified that in the future, like I never wanted to go through that again. One of the most healing things about coming out as trans was that I went into it with so much confidence. I knew exactly how I was going to share. I knew exactly how I would control the situation. And I was an adult in the way where I was coming into the room understanding my younger self and being like, I'm going to advocate for this guy. Like, he deserves it. One of the most healing things is that no doctor that I have worked with has interrogated me and being like, are you sure, are you sure, are you sure? The first time I saw a doctor for my medical transition, they just said, hey, tell me who you are and how can we make that happen? How do you envision yourself and how can we get you there? That's exactly what I needed, and that's why I live in Mexico. Between 3rd grade and 4th grade, I made a transition from Catholic school to CPS, and as soon as I made that transition, my math ability was immediately highlighted by all the adults around me. And that kind of sparked my interest in STEAM. I was so interested in math, and before that, I had been rejected kind of by my education system. So the way that interest looked like for me before making that transfer was through Legos. And I remember building skyscrapers around me that were bigger than my little body at that time. And it was the coolest thing in the world to me. Through high school, I got electives. Those electives were always math-based. So I studied the highest level of math that a high schooler could possibly study, and I used all my electives to do that. After taking so many math courses in high school that kind of impacted which university I selected for the next 4 years of my life. So I wound up going to Illinois Institute of Technology in Bronzeville on the south side of Chicago. And there I started off with studying civil engineering. And I studied civil engineering for 2 years. And I thought originally that I would really love civil engineering because I loved Legos. So if I love Legos, that's like a great next step to build infrastructure in the world that we live in. But after 2 years of studying civil engineering, I was just like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm not interested in it, and I'm not motivated to keep studying this. And I think mentioning that is very important because I think that sometimes students who are going into university for the first time feel like they need to have everything figured out on day one. It's such a big financial investment to attend university that someone as young as 18 years old feels like I need to have it known because this is going to cost me an astronomical amount of money year over year until I graduate. The truth is, how are you supposed to have it all figured out at 18, right? It takes time and it takes experimenting and it takes self-discovery to figure out what you want to study. After 2 years, I was brave enough to tell myself I can't invest in this career path anymore. It's not for me. And I changed my major to business and engineering graphics. And that was the perfect combination for me. I am very, very happy that I made that change midway through my university career versus graduating in civil engineering and having to go back to school altogether. After graduating college, I had accumulated a lot of debt. And that's the reality of students these days, is that college is expensive and it's very pricey. So I had to figure out how to get to work as soon as possible. While I was working, I still wanted to continue my education, but I couldn't afford a master's. So what I wound up doing is a certification in continuing education in data science for business. And throughout that certification, I learned about machine learning and artificial intelligence for the first time. And it was the coolest thing ever. I remember that for our capstone for that project, I exported data from Twitter on different donut companies. I taught a model about how to identify patterns for the success of different donut companies based on Twitter data. And that was cool. After that, I decided a few years later that I wanted to go ahead and get involved in my new community. I had just moved to Guadalajara in Mexico, and there was an opportunity to participate in a technical writing boot camp. Throughout that certification, I learned about how to write technical documentation for the first time. I have 2 other certifications, and now you can just see a pattern, right? I'm taking certifications instead of going back to master school. I did not feel like there was space for me. At Illinois Institute of Technology, we had a statement, a DEI statement that we are diverse and we are proud of that. And that was great that they had that statement, but there's a difference when the implementation of that statement was not in effect. There were students on campus who regularly shamed me for being an out lesbian, who were regularly trying to bring me to God, who were evangelicalists on campus talking to students and harassing students like this and shaming them. That was very difficult for me at that time, especially as someone who was trying to navigate their growing spirituality with a sense of sexuality that was already like, yes, I am definitely attracted to women. And then on the other side of that, we had an LGBTQ plus club on campus, and it was very, very, very small. There were probably like 3 gay men in that club. Not much other diversity outside of that in terms of the full scope of the LGBTQ plus community. In my early career, I did not feel supported with either of those two identities. My first big job after college was working as a center director at a math center. I was in charge of creating learning plans for children who were either behind in their math level, at math level, or ahead of math level. But I remember my first few days on the job, I had a parent come up to me, and just a little bit of additional background information here. I had replaced a white man who was the center director, and the reason why I'm bringing that up now is because it has context for that story. But when I started working, I had just replaced him. And the parent, he came in to the center and he was just like, "Where is so-and-so?" And I was just like, "Well, I'm the new center director, I'm working here." And he was just like, "You're the new center director?" And I was just like, yes I am. And he was just like, "My daughter has these homework assignments that she needs to work on. She needs a lot of help with it. She's not getting across the finish line." So then I took a look at the assignment. I pulled up some additional resources from our internal database that could support her in breaking down smaller concepts so that she could tackle the larger problem. And then I was just like, all right, we have an entire package here put together. I'm going to have this instructor work with her, and we're going to get her to the finish line with this math problem. And then he just looked at me and he was just like, "Do the math problem." And I was just like, "No, I don't have time to do the math problem. I'm in charge of teaching students here and preparing their learning paths." And I was just like, "This instructor and these resources have everything your daughter needs." And he was just like, "Do it." And I was just like, "Sir, I'm not gonna stop my work day right now to do a math problem in front of you to prove whatever you need to see right now." And then he just looked at me and he was just like, "You're a bad director." And he was just like, "The director before you was so much better. He was a smart guy and you're not." At that point, I was just like, "Okay, well, think what you want to think. Your daughter will get to the finish line with these resources. I promise you that." And he was just like, "No, I'm pulling her out today." And he pulled her out. And that was really unfortunate for her because she was a bright student. I currently work at a company that's really well known in the software development world. And it is the first time in my career where I am proudly out. I've been out since day one. I am celebrated and I am uplifted regularly. Also, there isn't workplace politics, so I can't do the best that I'm capable of if somebody is talking about my identity or not giving me the space that I need in order to do my job effectively in the workplace. So that phrase actually bothered me a lot, and now I feel so much more comfortable at work showing up as myself, contributing in the best way that I possibly can in the team, being as innovative as possible, and creating plans for the client that are respected and uplifted and celebrated. Trainings are huge because sometimes even if people are trying to bring their best foot forward and respect you, they might not have the full understanding of how to do that, or they might not just have like those concepts understood fully in their mind, and they might be going off of what they had previously heard from someone else. Trainings are important because they set a baseline. hey, these are these concepts that you must know as an employee in this company. This is how you respect people from different communities, and this is how you are not problematic in the workplace. And this is how you create a safe space for everyone to bring their best foot forward. I think traditionally a lot of companies have this framework, or at least this thought work around hiring DEI. And the thought work is this: okay, if we invest in this, it will reap rewards and we will financially profit. What I want to argue is that we're much more than just profit, right? We are innovation, we are inclusivity, we are making sure that you have a workplace that helps everyone bring their best foot forward when they feel respected in that workplace. It's so much more than just a profit line. I think that people need to invest in people. So ultimately, if I'm bringing my best foot forward as an employee every single day, I need my company to bring their best foot forward for me too. I need a safe space. I need to be able to reach out to individuals within the company who can support me with different types of things. I need to feel supported. And I think we need to continue having those trainings, making sure that new people who are coming in through the door and starting to participate like in the company culture need to have access to those trainings to make sure that they are respecting everyone. And I think that not just the new ones, but also the existing employees also need to have those trainings continuously. So I think companies who want to truly make people feel like a part of their company culture, you need to actually show up and live that. You have to have diversity in your workforce. I've been the only person of color on a team before. It is not a fun feeling to be the only person of color in the room and to be spoken over back and forth from multiple angles. I also think it's really important to be self-reflective and to make sure that you have programs that empower women. When we're talking about the case of Latinx women, which is how I was living in my earlier career, we are the most unpaid in the US. So at that time, I remember feeling awful when I went to work because I knew that my white male counterpart who was doing the same exact work as me, if not maybe even a little bit less, made astronomically more money than me. And I knew it because I saw the paychecks when I was doing the reporting, and I didn't feel like I had a safe space to talk to my boss about that. But you have to be aware, and you have to create safe spaces for people based on those different intersectionalities. I'm most proud of where I'm currently at. Currently, I work in the field that I want to be in. I'm developing experience as a technical writer, which was a big goal of mine over the past 2 years. And now I'm about 1 year in, and I'm documenting technology that means a lot to me. And that's a good validating feeling. But also, I'm working with a team that shows up for me every day, values me, I value them, and I have a great relationship with the people that I work with. And I feel like I can get what I need from them, they can get what they need from me, but that feels so good. And a big part of the culture that I'm experiencing in my current workplace is I don't have to do any of the guesswork when it comes to my salary. There's a set range, and I feel like, okay, I'm getting paid fairly for the work that I do every day. I just feel so valued in my company to have that transparency. So this is my first job in Mexico, working as a technical writer. And the company's official language is English, but we also have meetings in Spanish sometimes, and that has been a really great experience for me to jump in and use my Spanish skills and connect with that language in particular in the workplace. That has been super meaningful to me and super validating as a Latinx person. It's a part of me that I don't feel like I have to hide anymore. And in the US, it wasn't always celebrated. If anything, it felt like something that was heavy on my shoulders weighing over me in the workplace, and that was used as a tool against me. I would say another big change for me working in Mexico versus in the US has been the kind of culture that I feel when I do go to the office in person. Everybody is so welcoming, everybody eats lunch together, and you never eat lunch alone in the office. I remember trying to eat lunch alone in the office one day, and everybody came to my table and surrounded me, and I was in good company. and we were talking, and they would not let me go back to my desk until my 1 hour lunch break was over with. And that pause during the day is so necessary. That connection to other people who are working for the company, that sense of, hey, work is important, but also your well-being and your personal life is also important. So make sure that there's a balance there. Those were all things that I had not experienced in my previous roles in the US. So my near-term goal is within the next 2 to 3 years, I want to become a senior technical writer. And I'm currently on a path for that. So I do have that track defined with my manager, and we're working on it together. In the next 10 years, I either want to continue working as a technical writer because I love this field so much, or I want to expand into developer relations manager. And if I do that, I'm going back to the drawing board for part of it, and I'm gonna look at those job descriptions, figure out what I need to acquire skill-wise, and teach myself those skills so that I can fill that in and work as that in the future. My personal goals, I want to adopt another dog. I currently have one dog, and it's been a great experience raising her, so I want to get another dog. I want to continue my education. I have a few coding skills that I want to develop, and those are personal goals because I do fun things with those code. I also want to continue playing soccer. I really enjoy being a part of a team, and I want to compete in a local chess tournament near me.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, that's a good one. My younger self needed to hear that everything was going to be okay and that I wouldn't always be alone. I felt so lonely as a child, and I felt like no one would ever understand me, and that I was just destined to live this life, this lonely life, without any community. And when I made my first friend in the LGBTQ+ community, and when I started going to spaces that were LGBTQ+ friendly for the first time in my life, and when I started hearing the stories of those around me, I realized I wasn't alone, and that this world didn't have to feel like such a lonely place, and that there were people who lived the same experiences that I lived, and that we could share and have fun and celebrate. And I would just tell myself that I would live a good life. If you're going to be pursuing the traditional education route, which is going to university, apply for as many grants as possible. If you do not want to attend college, that's okay. You can learn everything on YouTube. You really can. Everything is out there. And there are also boot camps that you can either attend to for free, or if they have a cost associated with them, you can typically get a grant and then go for free through that grant. And I would just really recommend everyone keep in mind that you don't always have to go down a traditional education path to work in STEAM fields. STEAM fields are incredibly flexible with backgrounds. What you do need to be able to do is show up and pass the test. So I would just say the most important thing is to predefine your goals, look at job descriptions, learn those skills, really learn them. Work with a mentor. I worked with a mentor for 6 months who outlined every technology that I needed to be aware of before working as a technical writer for me. When you work with a mentor, you're also learning at such faster speeds. So be cognizant of that too, because you'll learn faster than you would on a traditional learning path. That's not to diminish the value of a traditional learning path, but it's also to say that sometimes our community, the LGBTQ+ community, faces economic constraints that other communities don't always face. So it's not the end of the world if you can't go to university. You can find other ways to learn everything. One thing that you absolutely need in order to be a technical writer is writing abilities. I'm not talking about writing abilities that are extravagant or including vocabulary words that are designed to make your creative writing pop, right? I'm talking about technical writing. So you need to know how to design a document to make it as user-friendly and intuitive to navigate as possible. You also need to have writing experience, so a portfolio. One thing that I would recommend anyone interested in becoming a technical writer do is have a blog, a website, where they can go ahead and write different examples of what they're capable of. Find something online that you can go ahead and document and start creating sample documentation that recruiters can then look at and say, oh, hey, this is really cool. Another thing that's important to mention is that technical writers don't necessarily have a technical writing background. What they do have is many diverse different backgrounds. So the most important thing that you need to focus on is the portfolio. Because even if you're a lawyer, even if you're not in this field, you're doing something else out there, there's opportunity for you to still make that switch if you are interested in it. Then I would also recommend technical development. So make sure that you understand the different technologies that relate to the type of technical writing that you want to do. One thing that makes that easier is to read at least 10 job descriptions of what you would want to do, pull out keywords like JSON, XML, APIs, those types of things. Look into them, understand how they work, understand what they are, and go ahead and create sample documentation on your website using your research. I would just say that it's important that everyone has a safe space to show up to at work every single day, and it's important that there are cultures that invite people. And it speaks volumes when there are. It could be life-changing for a person when they finally find a workplace that has an inviting culture.